Hello, BookTube. We're going to barrel along with the Western Canon Starter Kit. And for those of you who might be new to the feature, this is where we go to the Western Canon of Classics and do a stripped down, bare bones basic walkthrough that is designed to be accessible, designed to be doable, designed so that you can, so that it's not an endless list, so that it's not full of secondary sources, so that there's no invitation for you to spend money at a community college, where it's the basics, and you can just go to the library or Project Gutenberg and dive right in. And we started with the Bible, and we're just working our way forward. And believe it or not, there aren't many episodes left. The whole point of the Western Canon Starter Kit is that it not be long. That I want to stress that the basics are things that you can do in a very timely manner, and that you'll enjoy doing. Because once you have the basics under your belt, you can reread them, you can study them, you can go out and buy as many annotated editions as your heart's delight. Even go to school. But I wanted to stress that you don't need any of those things to make these your own. These, if you are in an English-speaking country, these are part of your own inheritance, your own literary inheritance. So you don't need anybody's help to get started, and even to get a long way, even to enjoy. And last time around, we did Shakespeare. And and the video largely consisted of me telling you that you have to read all of Shakespeare, which you might think that if I made that kind of a demand on you, I wouldn't be back so soon. But I did it as a placeholder. I don't expect anybody to read the complete works of Shakespeare in a week. But just so that we're clear between ourselves that dipping piecemeal into Shakespeare isn't going to work. You have to read it all, and you have to study it all. It's worth it, and you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy doing that. But today we're going to move on from Shakespeare, and it's only two authors, and you might think from that it's a step down, that I'm giving you a breather, and that's not actually true. The breather is coming. The breather is coming right after this installment of the Western Canon Starter Kit. But for now, we go from all of Shakespeare to two of the most brain-bendingly complex writers in the English language. Two of the real Everests of the Western Canon Starter Kit, and you can't do without them. We can't go around them, but they are not easy. Now, I know that sounds like a contradiction of what I was just saying, but you still don't need professional instruction to dig right in. You don't need footnotes or an annotated edition in order to start wading around and making sense of it. But these two are tough. They're well worth it. They're also brilliant. And they're both named John. The first thing we're going to talk about here is the poetry of John Donne, the most complex and brilliant and beautiful poet ever to work in the English language. Any one of his poems you could study for a lifetime. But I'm not suggesting that you pick just one. It doesn't really matter where you start with John Donne. He didn't write any beginner poems. And he didn't write any that weren't worth studying, even the crass occasional stuff that he did simply for a bag of coins. What I want you to do for John Donne, you do have to read John Donne, and you have to know his more famous poems, but you don't have to start with them. And you can also, you're perfectly free to pick your favorites. What I want you to do with John Donne, I'm not going to make a list of poems. What I want you to do with John Donne is either go to your shelves there in your own personal library. You will almost certainly have an anthology or a collection of John Donne somewhere. Pull it down, blow the dust off it, and read some of his poems out loud. Slowly and carefully out loud. Ignore the annotations and just see what you make of them, and then read the annotations and read them again out loud. Either do that, or if you don't have any John Donne, go to the library and pick any collected edition. Or download, I'm sure that Project Gutenberg and other websites have everything. One way or another, just do your own sampling. Most of the collection, most anthologies of John Donne will have all of what are considered his major, most important, and most often anthologized poems They're a fine place to start, but anywhere will do. Really what I'm stressing here for the first half of this part of the Western Canon Starter Kit is just an author, just John Donne, whether it's the Holy Sonnets or anything else. Make his acquaintance. I might even suggest reading a little about him. His life was almost as fascinating as his poetry. But he casts an enormously long shadow. There isn't anyone, and not just poets, but writers of prose as well. There isn't anyone who came after him that hasn't grappled with him. When you meet him, you grapple with him. And it's well worth the time. It's, in fact, a wonderful struggle. And the other John, the other John that we're going to deal with this time around is John Milton. And with John Milton, I'm not asking you to poke around or do an anthology because I'm only concentrating on one poem. But oh, book two. It's a humdinger poem. It's Paradise Lost. It's John Milton's Paradise Lost, which you really have to read. It's not good enough to read a book here or a book there. It really is worth your time to read the whole thing. It's John Milton's utterly crackpot attempt to write an epic about the Book of Genesis, to render into an English epic the foundational Judeo-Christian mythology of the Garden of Eden, the expulsion from paradise, the expulsion to hell, the rebellion of Satan and his angels, the fall of man. It's crackpot and it's incredible. It's an incredible work. You would have to be what John Milton was. You would have to have lived the many stages of the life that he led. Not only in the real world, very much in the real world, up to his elbows in mud of the real world, but also moving into realms that don't have anything to do with the real world. You have to be an encyclopedic, half crazy hypocrite like John Milton in order to write a book like Paradise Lost. And thank God there's only been one. so we have this poem, and it stands there like a promontory on the field of English letters. There's no way around it. There's no way to excerpt it. It doesn't do the poem justice, and it's not fair to you either. So that's our next step in the Western Canon Starter Kit, and unfortunately, it looks simple, but it's not simple at all. It's a frightful amount of work. The next step is to become familiar with at least a little of John Donne. Donne will involve you for the rest of your life, but dip your toe in, learn his poetry, say it out loud, and maybe read a little about him, and then read Paradise Lost. There are a couple of extremely good annotated editions of Paradise Lost, and there's an argument to be made that it's unfair to read it without annotations because Milton very much wrote it with annotations in mind, unlike all of the other stuff that we've dealt with. With Milton, he is such a library-bound, elusive, heavy writer that it's almost contrary to his intentions to read his poem without annotations. But I'd still suggest that you do it. At least try. I mean, try 1 book, 2 books, 3 books. See how far you can get without needing to lean on anyone. The language is completely straightforward, so you won't have any trouble there. The rest of it, my impulse would be to say try both these Johns without any annotations at first, just on equal terms, and go from there. And that's it for this time around. And believe me, John Donne and John Milton back to back are no relief from all of Shakespeare. But the relief is coming next time. The next installment that we do, you will. There are no brain busters in the bunch. It'll be a very different tenor, and I'll give you a little time before I hit you with that. Thank you, BookTube.